What is happening, my good people? Greetings. How are you? How's it going? How's everybody doing out there? What is the latest and greatest? Hope everybody's doing well, feeling fantastic and excellent spirits here on another live stream. It is a Wednesday, June the 18th, just 2 days away from the official beginning of summer. Why is it I'm coming out? All right, that sounds a little bit better. The official beginning of summer, the solstice, just 48 hours from now as we get ready to usher in the new season. And let me tell you something. Here in New York City where I live, I feel like I live in either Seattle or London because since Saturday morning, it has been 60, 65, 70 degrees and rain. It has been cloudy. I have not seen the sun in 5 days. And we're not going to see the sun until this coming Friday when the new season is ushered in. And by any means, I'm not saying this as a complaint. By any means, I'm not saying this to kind of say to Mother Nature what's going on, because get ready for this, people. As bad as the weather has been recently, and here I am sounding like a meteorologist, but as bad as the weather has been here in the tri-state Northeast area, a heat wave is on the way, starting from Sunday, where I believe it's going to be 92 to 96 to 99 to 98, 97. There's going to be 5 straight days of mid to upper 90s. And guess what? Am I going to complain? Am I going to shed tears? Am I going to go out of my gourd complaining about how hot it is? If you know me, and if you've listened to me over the years on my podcast, which again, coming at you tomorrow, absolutely not. Bring on the heat. I want all that smoke, because this right here, my friends, is the most wonderful time of the year. No, not from Thanksgiving to Christmas. Certainly not the Christmas holiday where you hear all the carols and all the songs and Mariah Carey and none of that. Right here, right now, or maybe not this very moment, but you understand where I'm coming from. So by this time next week, when we have the next live stream, when it's officially summer, you will not hear a peep coming out of my mouth. In fact, I'll probably relish it. Who knows? If I had a little bit more of a fitter physique, I'd probably show up without a shirt on. But of course, I'm getting a little bit crazy here. But with that being said, welcome to the latest podcast here as we get set for what is going to be a very fiery and a very spicy probably hour and 15 minutes, because I got a lot to say, I got a lot to get off my chest, and there's not that much going on in the world of sports. Yes, we do have the NBA Finals of Game 6 tomorrow, which I'll touch on. Do the Pacers even have a shot, considering that Tyrese Halliburton is on the game time decision watch when it comes to his right calf? I'll get into that. I'll get into some baseball, especially with the local teams, not to make it just a Met and Yankee-centric segment, but I have to touch on what has happened there, more so with the Yankees. They have not scored a run, it seems like, in about 3 weeks, and they're in the middle of a 5-game losing streak, where the Mets are also mired in a 4-game losing streak after last night's disaster in Atlanta, shocker of all places. But we'll touch on all that. I'm going to start off with the Stanley Cup, but before I get to that, those who are watching on the replay, please leave a comment. And I understand somebody left a comment last week where I tried to respond, and for whatever reason I couldn't. I'm still trying to work out the kinks as far as somebody posting after the live stream is come and gone. So for those out there that want to leave a comment, please do so. I'll manage that, and I'll still even go back to respond to that person. But for whatever reason, I'm checking all my settings. Everything seems to be fine. I can't seem to reply. It's not allowing me to do so. But please, if you do have something to say, if you have a suggestion, or if you like what I'm saying, or have a complaint, or disagree, so please, if you could do that while you're watching the replay, I sincerely will be welcoming for you to do so. Now, as far as people in the chat room, I understand they'll start to straggle in due time. But for those who hop on board live, share your comments in the chat room. We have bantered back and forth with what's going on in sports and what it is I have to say, or what transpires, etc. So one thing for sure is that whatever it is that you say throughout the course of this live stream, I'll post it up here in the room. I'll post it up on screen for everybody to watch, especially those on replay, and we'll have a fun time with that. So you know that's always encouraging. Now, let's get right to it. I understand that the NHL is not a sexy sport amongst a lot of people, and maybe even a lot of my viewers, followers, subscribers, etc. But I have to start off with a champion that was crowned last night in sports, and that being the Florida Panthers, as they have done, let's face it, I don't want to go as far as saying the unthinkable, because we know how good of a team they are. But when you look at these last 3 years, 3 straight Stanley Cup appearances, and obviously back-to-back against the Edmonton Oilers last year and this year. And last night, I want to talk about the game, and then I'll talk about the Panthers, and then I have some tweaks on them, which I get it. People are going to look at, oh, here goes Jay Reels being a curmudgeon on his soapbox, etc. But a lot of it, based on my opinion, I get it, but there are some facts behind it. So I'm just not going to say anything off of the top of my head or to ruffle the feathers of the 5 Panther fans that are outside of the South Florida area where, like I said, I'm going to come correct, direct, and in full effect always. But let's start with the good. Last night, when it comes to Florida, they were looking for a coronation, another one there as they won last year in a Game 7 in their building, and they did the same so one game less this year in a Game 6, and they came out firing. Now, Edmonton did get off to a good start, and Sergei Bobrovsky was a little shaky. He had some moments there in the first 5-6 minutes of the game before the Panthers scored, and I believe they scored with, 4:53 in a game, if I'm not mistaken. But Sergei Bobrovsky, their goaltender, certainly had a couple of moments where you kind of thought, ooh, where pucks looked like they were going to squirt between the legs, or he was trying to fumble around with the puck where it was up around his chest area, and maybe there was going to be a possibility that he would crack to where Edmonton, who needed to score first in the game last night, because as we've seen throughout, the Panthers have not only pounced to the point where they scored first, but they scored multiple goals in the first period. And just when Bobrovsky looked like he wasn't going to have it, what happens? A terrible turnover in the defensive zone there by Edmonton, where Evan Bouchard was handcuffed on a pass by Aaron Ekblad, but you also got Aaron Ekblad. He plays for the Panthers. I got Aaron Ekblad and I got Matthias Ekholm confused. So my sincerest apologies there. So when Ekholm had the bad pass to Bouchard, and I know that the forechecker, and that's how great the Panthers are when it comes to forechecking, had gotten to the path of Ekholm's pass where he had to lift it. So therefore Bouchard was handcuffed. And then next thing you know, Sam Reinhart intercepts the puck. He gets into the offensive zone. And then what happened, instead of Ekholm playing the body, instead of the puck, same for basketball, you always got to play the body more so than the ball, because when you start reaching for the ball and somebody gets around you, or in this case, when you start reaching for the puck and Reinhart gets around Ekholm, what happens? He has a great shot where the goaltender, Stuart Skinner, was not out. He was actually further into the crease than he should have. So therefore, Reinhart, who went top shelf, goes past the glove of the goaltender Skinner, and right away 1-0, and you could sense that the party was just starting there at the Amarant Bank Arena, which has been a million names over the years. But for the Panthers to get that first goal, you just knew that was going to be the beginning of the end for the Oilers. And then later on in the period, off of what was a 2-on-3, it wasn't even a 3-on-2, where Connor McDavid did come back from the play, but as he attacked, I believe it was at the time, I'm trying to think who the forward was, as he was trying to lead into the defensive zone, and he went straight to the player who set up the pass to Matthew Tkachuk, and then for whatever the reason, Jake Wallman was in no man's land, where Tkachuk was pretty much at the top of the circle, straight right in front of where Skinner was, but he also top shelved it, glove side, to where the Panthers took a 2-0 lead, and then you thought to yourself at that point, even though Edmonton came back down 3-0 in the first period in Game 4, but because this was a deciding game for the Panthers, this was going to be a clinching game, that even a 2-0 hole was going to be insurmountable considering the setting and the stakes that were there for the Panthers to be taken. And as it was, that was the case, because then even on the third goal, where Carter Verhaeghe turned around and it looked like surprised Stuart Skinner to the point where the puck went off of his shoulder, and it was a terrible rebound, because then it was right there for Sam Reinhart, who then hit it off the skate, which was a smart play on his part. And for Bennett to get his second goal of the game, he ended up with 4. Now, 2 of those were empty netters, and I'm going to get to that in a second with Edmonton. But for the Panthers, 3-0, there's no way to lose the game. Even at 2-0, you knew the game was over. But once you got the 3-0, that was it. And that goal, similar to Tkachuk's, came late in the first period to make it 2-0. And then this goal came with about 2.5 minutes to go in the second period, and that pretty much buried the Oilers at that point. And then the Panthers just played their game from that point out. Now, they did get the 2 empty net goals where the coach, Chris Knobloch of the Oilers, decided to pull the goalie. And I get it, you're desperate at that point. But he pulled Skinner with 7 minutes to go in the third period, down 3-0. I could see at 5 minutes, you know what, at that point, you got to do something because time is not on your side. Once you get sub 5 minutes, you really have to start to think about pulling the goalie at that point to maybe get 1 goal, and then you can kind of feel your way from there. If you get a goal rather instantly, and because they didn't do that, they decided to do it at 7 minutes to where seconds later, Reinhart gets the empty netter to make it 4-0, and at that point, the game is over. But he decided to pull his goalie again, and then what happened? Same situation where Reinhart gets the other goal, 5-0, and that is it. The coronation has begun. So for Edmonton, who did tack on a goal there late, but that was just window dressing. And then the Panthers, and I don't think I've seen this before in Cup final history, and I'm sure it's happened, but I don't want to get on the Panthers case, which you know I'm going to get to in a second. But I have to just throw this in there. For the Panthers to celebrate, granted that the game is obviously already over, it's salted away, and for the guys that were on the ice for the Panthers, that with 10 seconds left, they decided to throw their gloves up in the air. They stopped playing, and I get it. Edmonton just backed off. It's similar to what you see in the NBA where the team that has the ball and are up by 10 and they dribble out the clock, especially when it's under 24 seconds. And I understand that the NHL doesn't have a 24-second clock, but they dribble it out and that's it, whatever. Okay, fine. But in this case, the game is still going on. I understand it's over, but not only were they already jumping up and down, throwing their gloves up in the air, but then the guys from the bench with less than 10 seconds to go start streaming off of the bench and going towards Bobrovsky right in front of the net to celebrate the championship. Wait a second. What are you doing jumping the bench at that point? Now, I get it. That game is over. You're not going to call too many men on the ice. I understand that. But that, to me, I just found that appalling. Re-get it. Time is about to expire. The confetti's about to come down. So what, Jay Reels? It's 10 seconds to go. Let them jump on the ice. Oh, no. What if an Oiler player decided to sucker punch somebody? Then you'd have a melee of the ages, and it would have been a scenario where it would have been a black eye, not for yours truly, and I'll touch on that in a second, but to have them come off the bench. And not that I've watched every, I guess you could say, let's go back to last year. And I understand it was Game 7, it was 2-1. That's not going to happen. The year before that, the Vegas Golden Knights, they won 9-3 in the game. And I don't remember any guys from the Vegas Golden Knights coming off the bench with 10 seconds to go and just heading toward the goaltender where everybody was jumping for joy and going crazy. I do not recall that. So for the Panthers to do that, I understand it's not premature because the game is over, but premature because there's still 8 seconds left on the clock. If there's 2 seconds and everybody's jumping up, all right, fine, I'll give you that. Or even maybe less than 5 seconds. But 8 seconds to go, even though Edmonton skated to the other side, I mean, I just didn't like that. I couldn't stand that, which is going to lead to me throwing cold water on the Panthers parade. And yes, you've been warned, and I understand maybe today's not the day to do so, but I said this at the very start. I'm a little spicy right now. And for the Panthers, listen, all the bouquets, give them all the credit in the world, and I mean that sincerely. Because this is a team, 3 straight finals, back-to-back Cup finals, not easy to do. Think about the Tampa Bay Lightning when they won the back-to-back in 20 and 21, and they went back in 22 before losing to Colorado. And they made it to 3 straight trips. So this is in reverse for the Panthers because pretty much from that point, they picked up for where Tampa left off, losing the Cup in 22, the Panthers losing in 23, but not winning in 24 and 25. And listen, we know how stout they are. We know how they just come at you relentlessly with their fork check, with their back check. They are disciplined. They are on their game. They have the right players on that team. The Sam Bennett, who was your Conn Smythe Trophy winner for playoff MVP. They have Matt Tkachuk, who, as we all know, ever since he got traded there, and Jonathan Huberdeau, where have you gone? Because that is going to go down as one of the great trades. Forget about just in Panther history, in NHL history. Because that changed the whole trajectory of this franchise. And for Huberdeau, who's a guy that was drafted by the Panthers, been there a long time, gets shipped to Calgary where Tkachuk comes down there. And even though Tkachuk, who knew nothing about South Florida, He probably couldn't tell you at that time the difference between Pembroke Pines to Miramar to Fort Lauderdale to Aventura. But during his press conference, when he got traded there and he signed the big-time deal, whatever it was, 8 years, $78 million, and he even said, I'm going to bring a culture to this team. I'm going to bring a brand of hockey that I know how from my days in Calgary. And not that Calgary did a lot. I know Calgary, I believe, one year, what did they go to, a conference final? That was the year they beat Edmonton. I think it was 4 years ago prior to him going to Florida. And he set the precedent. And I got to give it up. This guy has been a godsend to that franchise, to that city, organization, etc., because all they've done is win. Now, granted, they didn't win the cup the first year, I understand, but you know what? They got to a cup. And all they've done, and all he's done, and they've done as a whole collectively since his arrival, is get to the dance, with the last 2 times winning. So much respect to Kachuk. I got to call it as I see it. And for the Alexander Barkovs of the world, the Sam Bennett's of the world, who I'm not a fan of, I'll touch on that in a second. But for him, giving up Brad Marchand, and Marchand is a guy that, as we all know, the pesky and pest that he is, the water bug player that I call him, being small in stature but big in heart, and obviously had his fingerprints throughout this whole Stanley Cup final. And for the Panthers, I mean, what more can you say? Seth Jones, they brought in a deadline deal, made a contribution. This is a team that looks like they're not slowing down at any point. Now, I don't understand the whole complexion of what their offseason is going to look like. Do they have some free agents on the docket? I know Marchand is one. He came in as a rental, but is this going to be a team intact moving forward to even, dare I even say, dynasty? Which I will touch on in a matter of seconds because I want to get out the good before I go to the not so good or even the bad for that matter. So when it comes to this Panther team, right now they're a juggernaut. And there's no ifs, ands, buts, maybes about that. And with the way they play, their style of play, their goaltending, and this is a guy, Sergei Bobrovsky, who's bounced around Philadelphia and came here with a guy that was very soft. That, yes, he had the ability. Yes, he was a guy that could have been an upper echelon goalie and has been. This was prior to him winning these cups. But his teams have foiled in the postseason big time. As evidence, there's a 1 year, the final year, I believe, when the Panthers went to a cup and lost, where the Panthers were the President's Trophy winners that year in 2022. And they had 120-some-odd points. And what happened? The Lightning ran right through them in the second round in a sweep. And a lot of that was on Bobrovsky, a guy that you couldn't trust in net. And now, all of a sudden, he's the gold standard. He's now won 2 straight Stanley Cups, and he's been rock solid, despite the fact that he was shaky there at the start of the game last night. So, and I see some comments there. I'll get to them in a minute. I know I'm talking hockey, people. I got to talk about it only because it just happened last night, and I got some spicy things. So you definitely want to stay clear and fasten your seatbelt because despite the fact that I'm throwing bouquets at the Panthers right now, and understandably, rightfully so, and for those who threw in some comments and for those that are in the room right now, don't worry. I'm going to get to the NBA Finals next, and I'm going to talk baseball, Mets and Yankees. I'm going to get on both of their cases. So, like I said at the very start, and if you're just joining in, this is going to get spicy. But right now, I want to hand out some, like I said, some nice gift with some bows and ribbons on top to the Panthers because they have been the model franchise here over the last few years. And I can't dispute that. No matter how much I may not like the team, no matter how much I may just scoff at the notion of, I can't believe this team won again. I got to give them the credit. And they certainly deserve every accolade based on what they've done here over the last 2 years. And even 3 if you want to throw them going to a Stanley Cup there in the 2022-2023 year. So that's all I got to say. And Paul Maurice, another Stanley Cup for him, the head coach. Kudos. Nothing more else I could say, add when it comes to that. Now, here we go. It was brought up last night in the post-game celebration to Matt Tkachuk, who's an assistant captain on the team, when he was asked, is this team a dynasty? No, not a dynasty in the making. Not could this be a dynasty? Is it already a dynasty? And you know what his answer was? Hell yeah, absolutely. Now, for those in the chat room, and I'll get to your comments, but I just want to post this question out there for those who follow the hockey or have been paying attention, whatever. Do you think, as of right this very second, that the Florida Panthers are a dynasty in the NHL? Now, I'm sure you know what my answer is to that. And he came out with a resounding, hell yeah, absolutely. And I understand he plays. And I get it that he's in a euphoric state, celebrating another championship in the midst of champagne, the cup, family, friends, teammates, executives, trainers, you name it. So I understand. But I'm sure if he woke up this morning, he's probably still asleep, or who knows, maybe he hasn't even slept. I'm sure if you ask him that today, considering when you look at the annals and just NHL, when you look at the Montreal Canadiens in the 50s, and even in the 70s for that matter, in the 50s, they won 5 straight. In the 70s, they won 4 straight. And after they won 4 straight, there was another team that won 4 straight Stanley Cups and went to a 5th, that being the New York Islanders. You want to talk about the Oilers after the Islander dynasty, then came the Oiler dynasty. Now, mind you, it wasn't consecutive like the Islanders or the Canadiens, but they did win 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years. Guess what? I understand it's not consecutive, but when you win 5 and 7, that's a dynasty. And I don't want to hear about the Penguins in 91, 92, winning back-to-back. That was not a dynasty. I don't want to hear about the Red Wings in 97, 98, back-to-back. That was a dynasty. No. I don't want to hear about the Penguins of 2016, 17, winning back-to-back. I don't want to hear it. No. And same for Tampa, same for Florida. They're not a dynasty. To me, a dynasty minimum, win 3. And I'll say this right now, maybe not with the utmost confidence. I understand it's easy to say this right this very second, but they're not going to win a cup next year because teams are going to gun for them to not reach that pantheon of being not only just a dynastic team, but a team that's going to be revered as one of the greats of all time. I mean, think about it. The last time a team has won 3 straight Stanley Cups, you got to go back to the Islanders when they won 4. And if you're going to be in that stratosphere, then guess what? You're going to have to be known as an all-time great team. And I understand that this team does not have the sexy superstar. It doesn't have Sidney Crosby. It doesn't have Mario Lemieux. It doesn't have Wayne Gretzky. It doesn't have Mike Bossy or Brian Trottier or Bob Gainey. He was a defensive player. I get it. Larry Robinson. It doesn't have guys like that. So despite the fact that they don't have that bona fide superstar, this is a team that, is it in the making? Yes, it is. But are they a dynasty now? No, it's not. And I don't think they're going to be a dynasty in the making because if they lose next year, which it's easy for me to say one more time today, I don't think they're going to do so. Because teams are going to gun for them. There's going to be a reshaping, you would think, of how to take that blueprint of what the Panthers do and what they're going to try to implement into their team. Because as we've seen here, the forecheck, backcheck, paycheck theory wins out. And you can have all the superstars, you can have all the top players, you can have MVP players on your team. But if you're going to play like the way the Panthers do, and you stay healthy and you keep your team intact without free agency, then guess what? You do have a dynasty in the making, as long as you win next year. But as of right this second, that is a resounding hell no. So Makachuk, he can talk about that all he wants. You can say, well, I play. Who's this guy, Jay Reels? No, go back in the history books. It's all right there. And listen, I've forgotten more sports than Makachuk has, and he's a player, and I get that, and much respect to him and what he's done. But let's call it as we see it. You mean to tell me that when you look at Wayne Gretzky or Brian Trottier or some of these other players who have won 3, 4, and listen, in Edmonton's case, they won 4 and 5 years when Gretzky was there because Gretzky wasn't part of the 5th one. So 4 and 5. Gretzky's going to look at this team and say, no, they're a solid team. They beat my Edmonton Oilers, Wayne Gretzky would say. But a dynasty? Nah. That team is still a far cry from what Edmonton did, from what the Islanders did, from what the Canadiens did. Because they have to win at least one more. And that's it. So sorry to break that down to you, Panther fans, and NHL fans for that matter, but at me all you want. Please speak up because I'm here ready to listen, ready to respond, ready to retort, etc. That's number one. Number two, is the parade going to be on the 4th of July weekend? Because if you remember last year, where Game 7 was on a Monday, I believe, and for the Panthers to win then, and I was thinking to myself, well, the parade has to be, if not Wednesday, probably Thursday. And even if they want to delay it for whatever the reason, all right, by Friday, by week's end. Do you recall that the Panther parade for the Stanley Cup last year was on a Sunday? So it took 6 days for you to prepare a parade up, what is that, A1A, Las Olas, there in Fort Lauderdale, where it was raining that day. And not that the rain makes a difference, but they had to wait 6 days for this parade. So now here it is. It's already Wednesday afternoon, and I'm thinking that parade will probably be, all right, it's not 4th of July weekend. Maybe it'll be July 2nd. How about that? Now, I don't know when the parade, you figure the parade would be at the latest Friday. Figure middle of the week, a Friday, why not? People are going to go to the parade, they'll celebrate. It was on a Sunday. So for those who go to church or who praise the Lord on that day, it's almost as if, well, I got to get an early service so I can go see the Panther parade. So although I could praise the Lord and say my prayers, but then I can go get drunk and watch the Panthers celebrate their first ever Stanley Cup championship parade. I mean, seriously, you couldn't even make that up if you ask me. So based on last year, so 6 days, so I guess it's going to be Tuesday, which they might as well just push it to the 4th of July so they can shoot off fireworks there that night. So, and right, people are going to say, well, Jay Rios, are you really going to nitpick over a parade? Well, usually these parades, whether it's the NFL, Major League Baseball, or the NBA, it's 2 or 3 days after they celebrate. So in this case, why not celebrate the parade on the eve of the NHL season? So they could just segue into raising the banner. Their second ones on the rafters will have the parade the day before. I mean, and I know I'm nitpicking, I'm having some fun here with these people, but that is just a flat-out disgrace. So that's number one. I got to get to that. Number two, I know this Panther team, as great as they've been, and everything that I've said just a couple of minutes ago, and I understand that, listen, they are rock solid and dynasty, etc. But this is not a likable team in my eyes if you watch this team. And I get it. They have, I don't want to say great players. They don't really have a great player on the team. They have very good players. Great is Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, Nikita Kucherov, Cale Makar. I mean, those are great players. The Panthers don't have that, but they have very good players. And that's not a knock. But it just bugs me to know that this team, as feisty as they are, as much as they want to get under your skin, as much as the forecheck, backcheck, paycheck theory, as I've talked about, it just bugs me to no end. And this is why I'm going to get on my soapbox, and I promise I'll be 90 seconds or less. When I see Sam Bennett run people and nobody does anything about it, when I see Sam Bennett last year against his own teammate now, Brad Marchand, well, last year he sucker punched Brad Marchand to where he was injured, and nobody's going to be there to retaliate. And I understand, I'm talking about an NHL that happened in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because when I see the fake toughness out there, and even though I know Evander Kane tried to get at Matt Tkachuk, etc., but yeah, they're just going to skate away, and rightfully so. They're up 5-1. Why do they need to get into a fight? But the bottom line is this, is that when you see a team as, I don't want to say they instigate a lot, but there's a lot of that fake toughness out there. And it just bothers me to see that, knowing that the sport, and they can get away with it in this day and age because there's not 2 or 3 tough guys on each team as it was yesteryear. But for those people that say that, oh, this is a rugged, this is a tough, this is a physical team. Yeah, they're physical in the way the game's played now. But if this same team was to play in the 80s, they wouldn't have a shot. Nowhere near a shot. Because anytime that Sam Bennett, when he ran Connor McDavid in game 2 the way he did, there would be repercussions and consequences. And I don't want to hear how, oh, this Panther team could stack up with some of the greats. Could they play with some of these other teams in the past? I'm sure they can with their style, but you also got to remember the game was much more physical and tougher back then. And the way it is now, the way it's constructed and constituted, is a far cry from what it once was. So I don't want to hear about how rugged and physical and this and that. Yeah, they are for 2025, but that doesn't mean that that team could play in 1985. So if they were playing against an Edmonton Oilers team in 85 with Gretzky, Curry, Coffey, Glenn Anderson, Anthony Tikkanen, Grant Fuhr, I mean, I'm going down the list, Kevin Lowe, Charlie Huddy, forget about it. And if you don't know who those guys are, look them up. And then, of course, on top of that, they had tough guys. Marty McSorley. They also had Dave Semenko. They had guys that if Sam Bennett tried to run Wayne Gretzky, you damn know that the next shift he's going to get run through the boards. And that, I'll just leave it right there. I know I digress. So, yes, I had to throw a little bit cold water. It wouldn't be me if I didn't do so. And just knowing that the team, as much as success that they've had, but they're not a likable team, not in my eyes. You see Matt Kachuk with the mouthpiece, and I understand a million players do that, from Connor McDavid always has the mouthpiece chewing on that, and you want to talk about NBA Steph Curry, whatever. But to me, the Panthers, as good as they are, they're just not a likable team in my eyes. So be it. All right, now I got to get to Edmonton side of things real quick before I get to the baseball and basketball, etc., because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about this. And this is also going to be fascinating from this standpoint. Now, they tied the series in shocking fashion. They were down 3-0 in Game 4. They came all the way back to take the lead. Then they gave up a goal late, and then they won in overtime thanks to Leon Draisaitl. But in these last two games, the Panthers imposed their will. The Panthers, I want to say maybe that loss reawakened them, because Edmonton's going to rue the day that loss in Game 5. They came out of the gate with a couple of big chances, but then fell apart, is one that's going to just stick with them forever. And I understand they're going to look at maybe last night's game and even go back to Game 7 last year to know that they had the opportunity to slip right through their hands. But this is just a bitter disappointment, knowing that you went back home, tied it 2, and if you just would have taken care of home ice, you would have been going back for a Game 7. And all right, you lose a 5-4 game, you lose a 3-2 overtime game, whatever the score may be. It sucks, but you live with it. And don't worry, I'm going to get to the comments, people. But for them to be a no-show, and despite the fact that they had chances, Connor Brown skating up the right side where he had a good look. I understand he's not Mike Bossy, but still. And then Connor McDavid knocking on the doorstep there early in that first period, wasn't able to cash in. Okay. But then what happened the rest of the game, where Brad Marchand just undressed you guys, and they just did not play well at all in their building in front of their fans. And then yesterday, I understand that Edmonton had a very good first period. They did. They had a couple of opportunities as well. And this is going to lead to my question there regarding Connor McDavid. But they had to play from in front. They had to play with some urgency. And last night, you did see flashes early on. And remember, the Panthers scored first and early in that first period. But I said this yesterday on the channel in my short on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please do. But now you have to really ask yourself, if you're a sports fan, not even just a hockey fan, does Connor McDavid get any blame for this loss? And I have to say, as much as we could criticize quarterbacks when they don't play well in big spots, a la Lamar Jackson for one, or we criticize the Aaron Judges of the world when it comes to not being able to deliver in the postseason after having monster regular seasons. And, of course, we could go back to Game 5 of the World Series. Yes, he hit that 2-run homer, and it looked like he was going to be off and running. And he did show signs in Game 4 where it looked like he was going to come around and start to hit, and punctuated by that home run in the first inning of Jack Flaherty in Game 5. But then he's going to be known for the drop fly ball in center field, which precipitated that rally by the Dodgers to tie the game. So whether it's Judge, whether it's the aforementioned Lamar Jackson, or any other player you want to talk about that has not won a championship, a big-time player, superstar player, now you have to throw Connor McDavid into that mix. And I understand it's a team game. I understand he can't do it all by himself, so on and so forth. Well, let's just go back to last year's Stanley Cup Final, where they were down 3-0. And obviously in the Game 4 where they won, I believe, 8-1, and he had 4 points in the game. And then in game number 5, was able to put up a couple more points. And in fact, I think in that 2-game span, he may have put up 8 points total. Maybe it was Game 3, Game 4, but I know he put up 8 points total, especially in Game 4, and maybe even in Game 5, where I think they won 4-3. But then the last 2 games, he was invisible. I get it. You have to credit the Panthers and how they performed there in order to slow him down or to stop him. But, all right, I'm not going to get on McDavid last year, although I could in those final 2 games. But he ended up winning the Conn Smythe Trophy, which I guess is meaningless considering that he won the playoff MVP on a losing team, which just shows how great he is. But then now, how do you explain this year? Where he did get a goal in game 5, albeit it was 3-0, and he scored that goal in the 3rd period. And he had 7 points total in the series, which he averaged 1 point a game. A lot of that was early on in the Stanley Cup Final, but was a literal no-show in these games. And last night, he had 2 opportunities where early on he was by the goal line and he had a clear path to see if he could get a shot on the goaltender Bobrovsky. And what happened? His stick extended and he didn't get a good opportunity to get either a good shot or a good pass to set up for a potential goal. And then the same for even Corey Perry, for that matter, where he led Perry just a little bit too much on what was an empty netter. And then there was another point, I believe, in that first period, and it could have been it was already 2-0 at that point, where McDavid had a clear shot. It was a 2-on-1. And I understand he's a playmaker. He's not a guy that's going to take that shot. But you know what? If you're a great player and you see an opening, and yes, I understand you want to make the play to get a better opportunity, but that's where he has to take that shot. He's going to have to say, I got to see if I have a lane and I have an opening. I got to see if I could go 5-hole. I got to see if I could go top shelf. And I'm sure they have the scouting report to go top shelf because Bobrovsky's a butterfly goalie. He goes down all the time. And if he did go top shelf, that would have been weak side. He didn't do that. He passed across, and I believe that was the Corey Perry play, if I'm not mistaken, where Perry, it was just out of his reach, and he was unable to score. So I got my plays mixed up. But still, McDavid had to at least take a shot there. And he ended up in the game at -4. And I understand 2 of those goals were empty netters. I get that. But McDavid had a terrible game last night for him. So how much blame does he get? I'm not going to put it all on him. But he's got to take a hit here, in my eyes. And if you've listened to the podcast or live streams over the months and years for that matter, I love McDavid. I think he's fantastic. I think he's just an otherworldly talent. But he's got to take a hit here. He's got to. I'm sorry. And we could talk about, well, they didn't have Zach Hyman. Well, he doesn't have the personnel. The Panthers were a better team. And that's all fair. But when you're the guy, and not just the guy on the team, you're the guy in the sport, you got to find a way. You got to somehow stand up and deliver. You somehow got to at least make your presence felt. And he did not, in my eyes, and from what I watched. And yes, we could talk about the goal he had in game number 5, but, I mean, did anybody think that Edmonton was coming back at that point? And as it was, what was that, about a minute and a half later, they scored a goal to make it 4-1. That's when you knew they put the final nail in that game, the Panthers. So, McDavid, I'm sorry, he's going to take some hits. Last year, you give him a pass. His first Stanley Cup, he came back from an 0-3 deficit. He had those couple big games where he scored 8 points back-to-back. And, yes, ran out of gas at the end. Wins the Conn Smythe Trophy. Okay. What's his reasoning this year? And I gave credit to the Panthers. Understood. But I'm sorry. He's not going to get a pass here. Now, what's going to make this fascinating, because now he's going to be a part of that discussion. He's going to be a part of the Connor McDavid, Dan Marino, you name any player, Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, and understand he still has plenty of a career left. But is it going to work in Edmonton? Who knows? Edmonton's going to have to make some changes. And as it is, he's going into the final year of his contract. Does he even think or address going into a walk year that he's going to test free agency? Now, hockey players are different breeds. They're not NBA player empowerment. I want out. I'm tired of them. No, they're not going to do that. They are not built that way. But I wonder, as I'm sure right this very second, as he's either boarded the plane or they're ready to take off from Fort Lauderdale, or maybe he's already in the air, I'm sure there has to be a little bit of a thought in his mind. I'm sure he's not going to share that publicly. I'm sure he's not going to even maybe share it with his teammates. But I know I would have to think it's only human nature that in his gut, knowing that he has one more year left in his contract, and I'm sure he does not want to leave Edmonton. I don't know anything. This is just from afar. But testing the free agent waters to maybe play in a bigger market or to play on a team that will put the pieces around him to win a Stanley Cup. And it's not as if Edmonton hasn't tried to do that, but it's not enough. It's going to be fascinating going into next year. And that's why I bring this up now. Yes, McDavid does take some blame here for this series. But now, the next step. Does Edmonton say, here we go, here's your extension? And Leon Draisaitl, remember last year, he got his extension. Do the Oilers do the same? Or do they wait it out for free agency? Now, I don't know who the Scott Boras is in the NHL. I know Don Meehan has been a long-time agent, but it's going to be fascinating to see what's going to happen there. Now, let me get to some comments here. Val representing with the hand wave. Giants lost yesterday. Rafael Devers, I know. Devers now wants to play right field after thumbing his nose at the Red Sox, saying that I want to play third base, even though you bring in Alex Bregman. All right, now fine, I'll play DH. But now Tristan Costas hurt. You want me to play first base? That's not the deal. That's not what I signed for. But he goes to San Francisco, and now it's like, yeah, I'll even catch for that matter. All right, Val, your birthday, yeah, it's June 29th. You should be happy about it. It's another year of life. You like this live? Thank you so much, Val. As a matter of fact, how old are you going to be? That's what I'm curious to know. Now, NBA's hurting for money. Game 7 guaranteed. My guy, Everyday Mets. I don't know if it's guaranteed. And I'm going to talk about that next, which I'll get to. And OKC feels like he's going to win. Oh, that's based on Val's. Who do you think the finals? Who wins the NBA finals? Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. And Val, of course, okay. Now, Thunder. We saw what happened there the other night in Game 5. I thought they had the game in control, despite the fact that the Pacers cut it to, I believe, as close as 3. But then they went on that run. Jalen Williams was unconscious, 40 points, SGA, and they go running away into Game 5. Now, just like the Oilers are going to rue the day that Game 5, that they lost, the same is going to happen with the Pacers. Having a 7-point lead in the fourth quarter. Granted, it was early fourth, and 7-point leads might as well be a 2-point lead. I understand that. But they fumbled, bumbled, and stumbled down the stretch. They closed the game out, or I should say Oklahoma City closed the game out on a 12-1 run to win the game. So they didn't score. Andrew Nemhard was throwing passes to the other team, and they were just sloppy with the ball, especially during that last stretch there in game number 5 when they cut it to 3, where they just turned the ball over, I think, on 4 straight possessions. And, yeah, that Game 4 is going to kill them, because if they would have won that Game 4, the chances of them winning the series would have been astronomical. Now, mind you, they come off of a very poor performance there by Tyrese Halliburton, who had no field goals in the game, 0 for 6 from the field, and also tweaked his calf to the point where it's a game-time decision for Tyrese Halliburton, and he says, if I can walk, I want to play. Well, I would think he's going to have to give it his all, because this could be the last game of the Pacers will play here in this season. And for how I look at it, there are a lot of people that think that the Pacers are going to win. And I think they're going to give maximum effort. I think that they're going to need a big-time contribution off their bench, whether that means Benedict Mathurin turns back the clock to Game 3 when he scored 27 points, or Aaron Nesmith could turn back the clock to the previous series when he scored all those threes against the Knicks in the final quarter of game number 1. And Halliburton, we know he's compromised. We know it's a situation where he's not going to be at 100%, and who knows if he's even going to start the game, let alone finish it as well. And Pascal Siakam was played well, and Miles Turner has had his moments, but they're going to need a lot. And I think OKC right now can smell it. I think the Thunder, based on what we've seen here over the last 2 games, that pivotal Game 4, and them winning it with the 15-point fourth quarter by SGA, and piggyback that with the big-time game that Jalen Williams had, I'm sure they could sense it. I'm sure they smell it, and I'm sure they want to close it out. They don't want to deal with a Game 7. They went down that road in the conference semis against Denver to where they had to play a Game 7, and we knew they blew the doors off of the Nuggets in that decisive game. But I don't think they want to go there. I think that the Nuggets. I think that the Thunder are not going to horse around here. Now, I would think that the Pacers, they're going to come out strong. They're going to come out fast. But I think that the Thunder, they will find a way similar to what they did in Game 4, and I see them closing out the series Thursday night or tomorrow night. I just see that. I don't know what else to say besides that, and especially if they're not going to have Halliburton, which leads to the next question, do the Pacers have a shot? Absolutely they do. I'd be silly to think that even without Halliburton, now that's a huge piece you're going to miss if he's not going to play, or he's going to play 13 minutes in the game. But generally, when you have these games in their building and the role players will rise because of the home crowd and because maybe they're feeling it, they hit a shot or two where they go on a heat check, whether it was Mathurin in Game 3 or even a couple of nights ago when TJ McConnell had a big-time game. And who knows? I'm sure he's going to see a lot of minutes in this game considering how effective he was when he played when Halliburton was on the bench. So what I could see here from afar is that the Pacers are going to throw everything in the kitchen sink there at Oklahoma City. But OKC, I think they're going to stem the tide. I think they're going to find a way, and they're not going to give in, even if they're down 15, 16 at the half. I'm sure they'll chip away. I'm sure they'll respond. And just like any other team in the league, they're going to go on their runs. They're going to try to chip away at a deficit that looks like it may be either insurmountable or, yeah, this is going to be the Pacers' night. Something tells me that the Thunder are going to do whatever it takes. They don't have to wait 3 more days to Sunday night in a Game 7 to try to fool around and roll the dice to see whether or not they're going to come up 7s, 11s, and not snake eyes there in order for them to win a championship. So similar to what we've seen here with Florida, I could see the same happening with the Thunder. And the Pacers, listen, this has been a magical run, and you know what? Maybe because of that, they'll have one more shining moment. But I don't think it's going to go, say, Game 7. Could it happen? Of course it could. They're in the game. I mean, they're playing, and it's in their building. So I wouldn't expect them to just roll over. But I feel that OKC, they got over that hump. Down 2-1, down in the fourth quarter, SGA and his MVP capabilities, I think that for one more time, they're going to rise to the occasion and win the game. Now, would I be shocked if it's a Game 7? Of course not. But I think OKC is going to seal the deal and win the game. All right, now let me get to the Major League Baseball storylines here. And I got to start off with the Yankees. And only because I would have started off with the Mets. Everybody knows I'm a Met fan. But I have to start off with the Yankees. And it's just shocking to see how this team has gone into this offensive funk. Now, they did get some reinforcements back because they had Giancarlo Stanton back in the lineup who missed the first 2 months of the season with the scenario, almost 3 months when you think about it, with the elbow inflammation, and he's batted .500, small sample size, 4 for 8 in the first 2 games. But even with him back in the lineup, they still can't even scratch out a run. And mind you, this was on the heels of getting swept by the Red Sox over the weekend, on top of them losing the first 2 games to the Angels here. So they got swept on over the weekend. They lost, got shut out there on Sunday, lost in 11 innings Monday night, and got shut out again last night to the tune where it's now 29 innings and counting that the Bombers have been bomberless. Now, you'd think they're going to snap out of it, and when they do, it's going to be one of those 11-2 thrashings, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's as early as tonight. But this has been an anemic of a Yankee offense as I've ever seen. And I can't recall the last time they lost 3 straight. So I got to go back in the history books to see that. And for a Yankee team that is right now scuffling big time, I would think they'll snap out of it tonight. As a matter of fact, let me see what the pitching matchup is because that's going to be key. But I can't even say that because Kyle Hendricks, the former Cub, came into the game last night, I believe, with the second highest ERA in the American League. And all he did was pitch 6 innings, struck out 9, and then give up a run. So it doesn't matter who's throwing. You could have me pitch against the Yankees right now, and I think I'll go 5 innings without giving up a run. That's how bad they've been. But it's not going to last forever. It's not going to last long. You would think that there's going to be a situation where they're going to snap out of it and in a big way. They're not going to win a 4-1 game and then all will be fine. I think I could see 7-0 second inning written all over it tonight as I take a look at the matchup here. So for the Yankees, who have hit the skids and they've been terrible on the base paths, they have been just back to their 2024 form when it comes to fundamentals and trying to execute base running mistakes and not necessarily mistakes, trying to execute base running from going station to station. And all they've been is the Keystone Cops there when it comes to running the base paths. So all I'll say is this: they will snap out of it. And here's your starting pitchers. Ryan Yarbrough against Jack. I never heard of this guy. Kochanovich, I guess how you pronounce it. Now, the Yankees, historically, even in their heyday, against pitchers that they haven't faced or they haven't seen or not really familiar with, they have not been good. So, I don't know. That could be an omen for another, maybe not shutout, but another anemic performance. But like I said, watch tonight be the night. Third inning will be 8-1 Yankees, and then all will be right in Yankee land. But Ryan Yarbrough, the soft-tossing lefty, who knows? If they go down 3-0 first inning and the Yankees are tight, it could be another long night for the Bombers. So that we'll have to wait and see. So that's what you have there with the Yankees and them falling, I don't want to say slowly, but that 7-game lead that they had in the American League East, it's slowly but surely coming down to now just a handful of games. I think they have a 3-game lead in the AL East. Actually, 3 and a loss and 2.5 ahead of the Rays, as the Rays lost last night. So that's having the Yankees. And then on the other side of town with the Mets, now they've lost 4 in a row, and they're at an embarrassing weekend against the Rays. No ifs, ands, buts, babies about it. But now the other thing is, last night they lose to the Braves. They were up 4-1. They were up 3-0 and 4-1 in the 8th inning. And then Marcell Ozuna clears the bases with a double, which was reminiscent of the game last year, that Monday after the season when they had that crazy game. It was 3-0, then 6-3, and then the Braves took a 7-6 lead thanks to the bases clearing double by Ozuna. And it just brought me flashbacks to that. And I was watching the hockey, so I didn't really pay attention. I was watching on my phone, but obviously I was glued to the hockey despite the fact that the game got out of hand there late. But for the Braves, doesn't matter where the games are played, Fulton County, the former Turner Field, SunTrust Park, now Truist Park, this is the house of horrors that the Mets, for whatever reason, they can't shake off. So they lose another tough game last night on the heels of getting swept by the Rays after having a day off there on Monday. And with the Marlins beating the Phillies yesterday, that was big because the Phillies would have drew closer in the division, where right now they're just 2 ahead, or 2 behind, I should say, the Mets. And remember, they have a big 3-game series in Philadelphia starting Friday night. So as much as we can look at the Mets still being in first place and no harm, no foul because of the Phillies losing, well, the Phillies are on the horizon. And if you recall, in late April, the Mets swept the Phillies out at Citi Field, which if the Phillies have long memories, I'm sure that's going to be right at the forefront come Friday night when first pitch is at Citizens Bank. So all I'll say to this is that hopefully the Mets can get the next 2. The Braves, as we all know, they've been floundering the whole year. But, of course, whenever they see the blue and orange, that is the panacea for the Braves and all their woes this season. But let's see what is going to happen here tonight, whether or not the Mets could right the ship and snap this 4-game losing streak, which I hope they do so. And the pitchers for tonight, let's see, and tomorrow for that matter. Paul Blackburn, last time we saw him, the Mets had a 5-1 lead going into the top of the 6th, and then Blackburn came in and got lit up like a Christmas tree, and he's going up against Chris Sale. Now, Chris Sale obviously hasn't been the same force that he was last year, although he does have respectable numbers, but still, Chris Sale, that matchup favors the Braves, and then tomorrow, the Mets will toe the rubber Clay Holmes. So Clay Holmes, 79 pitches last week against the Rays, leaves the game. And Holmes, all right, he's been fine this year. He's been good. All right, I understand 7.3, 2.87. He's probably been more than good. But at the same time, can he pitch more than 79 pitches in 5 innings? Please? So for the Mets, and he's going up against Spencer Strider, who, as we all know, even though coming off of Tommy John, and has been so-so. As a matter of fact, he's been terrible. I thought he was been a little bit better, but he's had some dumb luck in some of these games. He's 1-5. I get it with a 4.3 ERA. But when the Mets, whenever they're in that building, it always seems to be a house of horrors. And it doesn't matter where. Whether it's the current ballpark or former ballparks, the Mets always, for whatever reason, can never, ever win a big game. And now they have 2 big ones because that's going to lead into the weekend between the Mets and Phillies, a fight for first place and NL East supremacy there as we get to the latter part of June. So let me see. You got any more comments here? I got a couple of comments here. So we're talking baseball. Let me see. Everyday Mets back. It's the Punisher. Henny, what's going on here? The Punisher. What, do I look like John Bernthal? Is that, if that's the case, all right, let me put this out there for the aggregates. It's the Punisher. Now, I want to know what you're referring to, Henny, if you're still there in the room, if you're still alive. This guy means business. Hey, listen, this is what I love to do, people. This is my passion. This is why I quit my job back in February of 2024 to pursue this full time. Now, I got to start earning a living doing this. And yes, I'm doing this for free. And I'm trying to, I do have some sponsorships, a couple of them, but they're not paying the bills on a consistent basis. So you got to, I do. If you're saying I look like John Bernthal, my guy, kudos to you. My wife she'll fall out of her chair because she loves John Bernthal. Now, and listen, I take that as the ultimate compliment because I like him too. I think he's a good guy. I think he's cool. I think he's, rugged, the whole 9 when you look at what he did there as far as that role being the Punisher. So thanks. And Henny, I'm kind of curious. How'd you stumble across the live stream? I believe it's your first time on, unless you've been another name in the past. So thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you jumping on board, throwing in a couple of comments. Me being a Punisher, yes. Although I don't have 9mm or Glocks or ammunition in that regard, my ammunition is right here, my microphone. So I appreciate you hopping on board and sharing a couple of comments there in reference to the Punisher. But if you have anything on your mind with sports, please feel free to do so as I'm talking a little baseball here. And then also I know Shohei Ohtani pitched that 1 inning the other night against the Padres, which much ado about nothing. Yeah, he gave up a run, a sac fly to Manny Machado, a couple of hits. But for the Dodgers and Padres, and they're fighting it out for first place in their own right, Dodgers take the first 2, which goes to show you that it's still the Dodgers division and it's everybody else as they try to pad their cushion. And the Giants, for that matter, they lost last night to the Guardians. So for them, the Dodgers, that is, right now, they currently have what? A 3-game lead? Yes, over the Giants, 3.5, and now a 5-game lead over the Padres. So not to say that the NL West is a wrap, or not to say that the Dodgers can put their feet up, but now they're starting to trend in that direction, knowing that they have gotten the best of the Padres here in these first 2 games. There's 2 more left. So if the Padres do win the next 2, it's no harm, no foul. They won't lose that much in the standings. They'll actually be even to what they were at the start of the week. So that we'll have to keep in mind here, that the series is far from over. Let's see what the Padres will do to try to get back at them. And let's see what their pitching matchups look like over the next 2 nights. So you have Stephen Kolek against Emmett Sheehan. Those guys I'm not familiar with. And the Dodgers, we know their pitching staff is in shambles. Starting pitching, that is. And then tomorrow you got Ryan Bergert against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So that's a pitching matchup that favors the Dodgers. That we'll have to wait and see. Let me see. Kolek, he's 3-2 with a 3.5 ERA, 5th starter. And I would think Sheehan is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he's, a guy that is, and he's actually from New York, that I wasn't aware of. 4-1 with a 4.92. And remember, no Roki Sasaki, no Blake Snell, no Tyler Glasnow, and they're going to continue this, what am I looking for? Carousel of starting pitching that's going to come in and out of the lineup or out of the rotation. And the Dodgers can afford to do that, considering their resources, the payroll, doesn't matter. They can put me in the rotation and I can make minimum. And it doesn't matter. as long as I spot start every now and again, I'll be fine. So the Dodgers right now in very good position to put themselves with more distance to the Padres and even to the Giants for that matter. And I know you have this weekend Boston visiting San Francisco, so you're going to have Rafael Devers going up against his former team not even a week after he was traded to the Bay Area. So that is something I'll touch on tomorrow. And then, I was looking at betting streams, and I saw because you give good advice on that. Betting streams? Now, listen, I'll be transparent. I can talk gambling as far as point spreads. I'm not, and I appreciate you stopping on board, and thanks for subbing on top of all that. But I'm not a guy that does the fantasy or does the gambling. I can tell you about players. I can tell you about their production. I can tell you, what they do. Would I draft this guy? Would I draft that guy? But I'm not one that is well-versed when it comes to that. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not going to fake the funk with you. I've always been authentic and transparent when it comes to my content and what it is that I do. And based on that, hopefully you don't sub. But yeah, if you want to say, Jay Reels, what do you think about this player? Should I draft this guy, Fernando Tatis, whatever? I could tell you. But yeah, when it comes to dollars, when it comes to even point spreads for that matter, when it comes to the NFL, I could tell you that who I like and don't like, but I'm not one that is immersed in the gambling world. So I guess that's the best way to put it. But Henny, I do appreciate you. But yes, you look 100% like John Bernthal. But some of the betting advice, keep it up, man. It's good content. All right, well, I'll continue to do that, Henny. Keep coming back, my man. And in fact, I'll have a podcast tomorrow. I have a podcast every Monday and Thursday. Apple, Spotify. Also, if you'd like to watch the video portion on Spotify, as well as my YouTube channel that you already subbed, so I thank you for that. And that will usually gets put up around noon every Monday and Thursday, so definitely check out for that. Come tomorrow. And if you have anything else to say before I sign off, I'll do some housekeeping before I do, just to give you a chance if you have any other comments, questions, suggestions, whatever it may be, because as I like to do before closing out, yes, any last thoughts from the chat room? This is your opportunity, going once, going twice, etc. Before I bid adieu. Coming soon, you know the deal, critique videos and vlogs as I'm setting that up for the third quarter of 2025, getting ready to really take the content to other heights besides the weekly live stream and the 2 podcasts that you get on Mondays and Thursdays. Of course, for those who are watching the replay, if you haven't done so, please subscribe, like, leave a comment on YouTube or on my social media accounts, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the J Reels Podcast, or J Reels on Instagram, Twitter, J Reels1, just a number. Any questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so. Send them to the jreelspodcast@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to follow up. And obviously, you can see on the ticker below every Wednesday, as well as when the podcast is released. The latest edition coming at you tomorrow. Thanks to all who stopped by. And for those in the replay, like I said at the top, please leave a comment. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. Sports, it's in the blood, in the DNA since day one. And as I mentioned before, I'm an independent podcaster, content creator doing this full time. I don't have other side hustles. I don't have a 9-to-5. I don't have a part-time gig where I have to punch in and punch out on a time clock. No, this is it. And I do have a couple of brand sponsorships. Just go to the podcast on Monday, just a couple days ago. I have links there. You can click on those. One is a soda brand, drinkolipop.com. The other is betterhelp.com to get your mental health in order. It's all there. Also, Bomba Socks for those who want to increase and uplift their sock game. I got it all. Well, maybe not all. I got some. But as much as I'm trying to get more brand partnerships and more so sponsorships, this is my only job. And providing not only quality content, but informative, knowledgeable, entertaining, and more importantly, credible. I'm not doing this for clickbait. I'm not doing this to get all the rush and the dopamine fix of saying something that's off the cuff or saying something that's stupid or saying something that's outlandish with dumb thumbnails and headlines and titles. What you see is what you get. True, real sports talk without the regurgitated narratives that you see on other hot take shows and sports takes. I started off talking hockey where everybody's going to talk about the NFL. I started off talking about other things besides whatever is happening in the moment. Yes, because this is a well-rounded live stream / podcast. And one thing you'll never ever question is that whenever I sit in front of this microphone and camera, I promise I will deliver nothing but 100% passion, fire, energy, fury to my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. From my lips to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are, the J Reels live stream always comes live, correct, direct, and in full effect. Henny, thank you, my guy, for jumping on board. I really appreciate it. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond, peace, love, and God bless everybody. And until next Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, here on the live stream, and of course tomorrow on the podcast, on the flip, baby.